Welcome one, welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC East Mixtape Volume 107. You can listen to this podcast on any one of SB Nation's NFC East blog podcast networks. You can also watch us on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel or the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. I am RJ Ochoa from BTB BLG. Happy Tuesday, April 11th to you. Happy Wednesday, April 12th to everybody else.
Happy Friday to everyone listening to this later in the week, TGIF. I wonder if people do. When's the latest do you think people listen to the episode each week? Because the weekend would make sense, right? It could be driving. Or
I think
doing
like Saturday. Like I used to listen to podcasts a lot when I would mow the yard. You know what I mean? Like Saturday morning type thing. I could see that. Like, you know, kind of honeydew list, running around, errands, this and that, whatever, blah blah blah. You know, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts on Saturdays myself, though, if I'm being honest.
I like a good, wash the dishes or something like mow the. I don't have a lawn now, but if I did, something like that. I love a thing like that.
What's your favorite thing to do while listening to a podcast?
I mean, probably walk. I'm a big walk and podcast guy. It's a nice little.
That sounds horrible to me. Like
I would have horrible?
I would have like anxiety of not being able to like hear the environment around me. You know what I mean? Like
some AirPods, man. Sound canceling.
No, but by the way, I want to be able to hear like what if there's like a threat that I have to hear. You know what I'm saying? Like
threat.
I want.
I'm not totally tuned out. I can still hear things. I have a bone to pick with Apple, and why are the AirPods so not durable? I feel like every time I've had AirPods.
I've had one pair for like 4 years. Like, I mean,
the phone call feature goes away. Like, it goes to the point where like people can't really even hear me speaking anymore. At a certain
I think
point.
that's you. I mean, if like you seem to be the common denominator here. I still talk on the phone all the time with my AirPods.
So Jimmy, I'll call him to like Jimmy Kemsky. I'll call him to schedule a podcast, and he'll have those connected, and I can like barely hear him. So it's happening with him.
But you're saying you'll call him instead of texting him to schedule this?
Jimmy, I usually like to text, to be clear. I'm not as big of a
call guy. I mean, I know you're afraid of being on the phone. Like that's the thing.
I'm not afraid of being on the phone. Why is this? This is such a misconception. Is this?
No, you hate the phone. Like you don't. You're afraid of phone calls. That's what I understand.
I feel all right. You're trolling, but I don't. I really don't. I don't like. I fully admit that I don't like talking to people I don't know on the phone. 100%. For people I know and have a comfort level with, no problem at all. Although I would prefer text in general because I just think it's more efficient a lot of the times. I think sometimes you get on the phone and then you start talking about other things and what could have been, like the phrase, this meeting could have been an email. Like, like something like that. But anyway,
I actually really don't like email.
I don't like email either.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you email me, like, I like
you want to get to me? Email better than a meeting.
I'm fine with that, disposition, but I'm more of a fan of a text message, a Slack, a DM on whatever platform that is. Like that seems so much more natural to me than an email. Like an email, I got to reply and I got to like line it up right. Sometimes you got to like scroll horizontally. Like, it's too much work for me. I'm not a fan personally, but it's not, again, I'm not afraid of it the way you're afraid of being on the phone. But
I'm not afraid of being on the phone. I just don't like
fear is going to be
strangers.
Fear is going to be an important factor in today's episode. That wasn't like a fear factor
because it's a fear factor episode, and Joe Rogan is here.
It's not. Before we get to what this episode is about, by the way, I don't think Joe Rogan's podcast on Apple. Like that would be a nice like kind of Apple like tying a bow on it because isn't it a Spotify?
No, I think he's only a Spotify guy.
That's what I'm saying. So like this is the anti.
I'm not anti-Apple. I have iPhone and MacBook and everything, but
but I'm saying like again, it was just a fun joke that you ruined. So thank you for that. But speaking of Apple, Apple has reviews. Apple has reviews for podcasts, which Spotify does not. Actually, we get all sorts of people who listen on Spotify.
I don't think that's true. I think that changed.
I really don't know. I'm an Apple person, so but for a long time at least, Spotify did not allow reviews. So we would get messages from people who would say like, "Look, I'm a Spotify listener. I can't leave a rating or a review. I can only leave a rating. Blah 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 blah, etc. etc." But if you leave a review, at least to my understanding, on Apple, we will read it no matter where you leave that review. Go to Blog of the Boys, go to Bleeding Green Nation, go to whatever NFC East blog podcast network you want to give love to. Give a rating, write a review. You do not have to subscribe, but a rating and a review certainly go a long way towards helping us out. We have a new review on the Blog of the Boys side of things. Are you ready, or are you looking at Spotify potential reviews?
Well, you can read it. I'm looking for if there's definitely the star. Yes.
Well, you
but
need to pay attention to the reading because there's a question.
I'm paying attention.
Okay. This comes to us from Dave H45. And it was written on April 2nd, 2023. It is titled NFC East Question of the Week. It's a bit long, so I'm going to hurry on up through this. What's up, guys? I was the one who hit you on Twitter about this idea specifically to spice up the offseason. A nice Eagles-Cowboys spar to get the show going seems appropriate with the what is it called? The emoticon with the semicolon and the close parentheses. Is that what it's called? The emoticon? Anyway, sure. My question to kick things off. Where do both of you stand on Dak and Hurts after this season? Dak is coming off of a playoff stinker while Jalen shined bright in the Super Bowl. However, we should all be cautious to put too much stock in the last thing we saw. It's a year-to-year league, and it's very hard to stay on top in the NFL. When people start doing their top 10 lists later in the offseason, my guess is Hurts will average out to be somewhere around QB 3 to 4, and Dak will be QB 8 to 10. How likely is it that Dak will pass Hurts on that list in future years, or do you think Hurts will never be rated below Dak again? BLG, is Dak forever a quarterback no longer to be feared, like you said last season? RJ, is this now Jalen's division or not so fast? Looking forward to hear this back and forth. So I guess there's like several portions of this question. I think, to kick things off, because it's on the BTB feed, I think that we've seen, just because he's been in the NFL longer, more consistency from Dak. Or he just has a larger body of work. So like we know he's an established, call it whatever you want, top quarterback. Hurts is a little bit more small sample size, never finished a whole regular season. I think that's a lame way to put it, but again, that's just like what the internet says at this point in the year. So I mean, I will say I don't know that we ever see another regular season like we just saw from Hurts. It's not ridiculous, I think, to say that was the peak of his NFL career. And that's not to say he won't still be a very good player, but like it was just such an incredible season that we saw this past year. So I'm certainly not willing to say that Dak will never be the superior quarterback in the division ever again.
I think Dak has the higher floor right now of the two, like to your point about the track record and knowing what he is more so. So I think you can make the case for that. But I also think you have to say Jalen Hurts has the higher ceiling. I mean, he's been to a Super Bowl. He played extremely well in that Super Bowl.
Well, he had the fumble.
Okay, but come on, like,
no, it's a thing. Like we have to say it. Like it can't not be a thing.
Yeah, but the point is, do we know Jalen Hurts can play at a very high level in the biggest game of the year? The answer is yes. Yes, we have seen that happen. We know it can happen. Can Dak do that? Maybe. Do we know that? No, we don't know that explicitly. So I think you have to give Jalen Hurts the benefit of the doubt when it comes to ceiling. Also, I agree that, this is going to be 2022, definitely going to be one of the better seasons of his career because of how good it was. But I'm not convinced that he's hit his ceiling yet by any means. I mean, he turns 25 in August. Like I still think.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think he can still not have hit his ceiling while never having another season that is statistically as great as 2022. That was my point, at least.
Agree, but I also think he still could have one that's even better. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. I'm not saying it's the most likely outcome for 2023 because of, I think, how we feel that, it's not just like it's always simple as, well, then you're this good and then you even get better the next season. That's just not really how the NFL always works. And one thing that Dak has in his favor is that he's probably going to be due for some good luck in terms of not leading the NFL in interceptions next year. It could still be an issue to some extent. We'll see. But I'm ready to ride with Jalen Hurts. Again, the age and everything, the contract. Dak's had some injuries too. Like, for as much as we want to say Jalen Hurts hasn't finished the season, Dak's had some kind of serious injuries here. Not like debilitating entirely, but some that have been like leading him to be unavailable and some that could maybe be a little bit concerning over the long term. So I think you have to bet on Hurts more than you would bet on Dak at this point.
We talked about this in the lead up to the Christmas Eve game, just because it was going to be the Dak Minshew game after the Hurts shoulder thing. How we had been robbed, right? Obviously, of like any real Dak Hurts game. And like, I thought that point was exaggerated because it's not like Hurts had been what he was this past season for a long time, right? Like that was just that was like a new arrival type thing. But again, the point still stands that there had been some games lacking juice since 2020, since Jalen Hurts entered the NFL. both of them have missed time in each of those seasons. Obviously, Dak missed a lot of time in 2020. He missed the 1 game in 21. He missed the 5 games this past season, obviously. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a thing, but like that's why backup quarterbacks matter. That's why you have to put stock in all these things. That's why I loved the Eagles trade for Gardner Minshew. That's why I was so down on Cooper Rush, and he proved me wrong, and I'm very happy about that. I agree. I think that's a great way to put it, that Dak has the higher floor. I agree that he's going to be the beneficiary of some positive luck and regression to the mean in a positive way. I think his front office is finally giving him like Dak was like, that's where they've been on opposite sides of the spectrum. Like a year ago, the front office was like, hey, we're going to take away Amari Cooper. Good luck. You know what I mean? Versus the Eagles. And this isn't like Dak or Jalen's fault, but the Eagles were like, here's AJ Brown. Right? Like, you know, they set Jalen up very well. It feels like the Cowboys have finally understood like, hey, what a foreign concept, you know, setting your quarterback up to succeed is going to help your whole team. So I do think that also obviously lends towards Dak Prescott playing better in 2023. And I think he was still very good in 2022. So to answer the final portion of the review before we get to today's episode, the meat of it at least, the question for you, Brandon, specifically was, is Dak forever a quarterback no longer to be feared, like you said last season?
Well, last thing I want to say on like the Eagles supported Hurts thing, I think something that people kind of miss in that is like, just because the team does support their quarterback doesn't necessarily mean that quarterback then takes that and runs with it and does well. You know what I
No,
mean?
of
It's not
course
like,
not.
and I'm not saying you're saying that.
It is a good thing. Like
No,
it's
absolutely.
better than when they don't support the
Yes,
quarterback.
and it
That's
should
all
be
my
noted,
point
but
is.
it's not like a guarantee. It's like, well, this quarterback got help, so then they're great. It's like, no, there's quarterbacks who have gotten help, and then they didn't maximize the opportunity that they had in front of them. And Hurts very much did, and deserves credit for that. He did as much as I think he could do with what he had for the most part. I mean, I'm not afraid of Dak. I'm not saying that means he's a terrible quarterback. He's probably the second best quarterback, and admittedly not an amazing NFC conference. I don't go into it, but like even look at Dak splits against the Eagles and tell me why I should be afraid of him. You can look at the win-loss, okay, but look at his actual performance.
What do you mean? Like, he was
masterful
against the Eagles on Christmas Eve. Like,
yes, sir, he was. And then guess what? The Cowboys almost lost that game still. Like, that's not like,
that's not on him. I mean, like, he was incredible. He had 1 incompletion against zone coverage in that whole game. Like, what do you mean? Like,
that it was a really bad performance by Jonathan Gannon.
It's
a great point.
So why does it have to be just Jonathan Gannon sucks and was terrible and was stupid? Like, why can't it be Dak is very good?
I gave him credit for that. We're not going to relitigate this whole thing. The point is, I don't go into a game against the Cowboys thinking the Eagles have no chance to win this game. That to me is, or like, I'm terrified of the other quarterback. That's my honest answer.
I think then you're like, measure for fear or whatever is a little off. Like if that's the case, then like there's like one quarterback. It's like, oh man, I go into this game against Patrick Mahomes, like whatever, and you pick the Eagles win the Super Bowl. So like if you weren't even afraid of Patrick Mahomes, and you're not afraid of anybody, and that's fine. But like
I was afraid of Mahomes. That was my biggest number one reason why they could lose.
The question, I think the measuring like-ness should be like, can this quarterback beat the Eagles? Dak certainly can. I like, if you want to say Daniel Jones can, if you want to say Kirk Cousins can't, like that's fine, whatever. But like Dak has more than proven that he is very capable of beating the Eagles, of hurting the Eagles by making his team win and the Eagles lose. Again, he has.
I don't think it's like Dak dominates them every time and owns them. I don't think that's
his record is overwhelming against them. And
what's
again,
his
he
had
one incompletion against zone coverage.
What's his passer rating
against
the Eagles?
He completed a 3rd and 30 against the cornerback that the Eagles decided to keep this offseason. Fine that they did, but like he had completed a 3rd and 30 dime that he dropped in a bucket. Like again, the idea that he's like some loser or whatever is silly to me. But my question here was, is this now Jalen's division or not so fast? I think there are very few divisions
I mean, it is until it's not.
What I think of like a year ago, the NFC South was Tom Brady's division, right? Like so like I there are so few divisions that I would say like one quarterback like owns and dominates, like where the quarterback of the reigning division champion doesn't have like a challenger. So I don't think that requirement is met here. Like there's certainly a challenger. There were 3 playoff teams in the NFC East. Like right now, I don't know. Would you say that the NFC North is Kirk Cousins' division?
No, I'd say it's Jared Goff's.
Right.
I would.
Would you say that the NFC West is Brock Purdy's division?
Not really, but
That's why I'm saying, like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't think it's like fair or genuine to say it's Jalen's division when Dak's team played very well and
I mean,
Dak
it's
played
Jalen's
very well. So
conference, though. It's Jalen's conference again until it's
I don't
not.
think that's. I still don't think that's true. Was the NFC
Is he the
Matthew
best
Stafford's
quarterback
a
in the
year ago?
conference? It's Jalen
I
Hurts
think
going into this season.
I would rank him number one, but I don't think that makes it his conference. Like I think like when I think of that, I think like the AFC was like Peyton Manning's or Tom Brady's, like the full and total like domination that we saw from one player,
This is a
throughout it all.
topic of longevity again, but
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like we've seen one supreme season from Jalen Hurts, and
well, I said it
like,
is until it's not, though. And if he keeps on
then
this trajectory,
the
then
NFC North is Kirk Cousins' division. If you want to live
but it's
by
not,
that logic.
though.
No, but it is until it's not, according to you.
I mean,
like you're picking
it
and
wasn't
choosing
like
the truth
his
when you want it to
division.
be.
He dominated it.
I don't think he dominated it. I mean, like they lost to the Commanders at home. How can you say it's his division? He lost to a backup quarterback at home. I mean,
I don't
so
think Hurts
again,
played poorly in that game. I think Quez Watkins
again,
fumbling a
you're
deep reception.
picking and choosing.
And a lot of
This
things.
part is Jalen's fault. This part Jalen gets credit for. This part, no, like
Jalen Hurts completed the pass to Dallas Goedert, where Dallas Goedert got his face mask ripped off, and the refs didn't call it, and that was a fumble. And then the Commanders
so
scored.
we're gonna like move all the
fault.
goalposts for Jalen Hurts, but we're not gonna move them for Dak and some of the interceptions and things like that. So
I mean, I think that is very different when you're looking at
it's different because it's the point you want to make.
Called and was not called versus an interception. A lot of interceptions leading the NFL. You can parse some of those. Sure, he led the NFL interceptions. That's not
okay. Well, he had one incompletion in zone coverage against the Eagles, and he gets no credit for that in your book.
It's one game that they barely won.
It sounds like a lot of cherry picking going on here
in that game.
A lot of cherry picking. I would say it is not Jalen Hurts' division. That was my question. So yeah.
Whose division is it then? It's Dak's division?
I don't think it. That's my point. I don't think it has someone who's division. Like the owner of it right now. I mean, Dak has more division titles. Like I think that's a stupid way to put it, but like he does. He has the most of any of the quarterbacks in it. For that matter, Mike McCarthy. Oh no, he only has one. But I mean, still, like so Dak has the most division titles of any quarterback in the division. So like, if we're going by longevity, that would be the case. I'm not making that argument to be very clear, but like right now. The only
17 minutes into the show and not talking about what the show is about.
Well, that was what you wanted to do last week. I would say the AFC West is Patrick Mahomes's. I would say that
the AFC is Patrick Mahomes's.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But like the question was about divisions.
The NFL really.
I would say that the AFC East is Josh Allen's. I would certainly say that the AFC North is Joe Burrow's.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people would push back on that with Lamar, but
I don't know that I'm fully ready to say. Like, I think Trevor Lawrence is amazing, but like again, it was a weird 1 year thing. But like, so
it's
like,
really no one's division.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm totally fine like saying it's Trevor Lawrence's, but it doesn't meet the same requirement as the others. But like, I really don't feel that way about any NFC division. And to be very clear, the NFC East is different from the other three in that it has 3 very good teams. But the others just kind of have like stinkers all around, which is evidenced by the fact that you mentioned that the NFC as a whole from a quarterback landscape is not very impressive. So we will see. But maybe there will be some new quarterbacks in the NFC by way of the NFL draft, which to your point is kind of what we're here to talk about. I mentioned fear. Brandon is afraid of talking on the phone and of people finding out that he is truly 6'5", not 6'9".
Even
like
though there's a picture of me with
There's no
Sixers
picture. There's no picture of your
center.
shoes. There's no picture of your shoes. We can't tell what you're
Reed.
standing on or what you're not standing on. So that's
I
all
probably can get a full body picture if you really want that.
Until we see it, we have no
I'll autograph
photographic
it for
proof.
you too.
Okay. Anyway, so we are going to like. By the way, shout out to Dave because the question was meant to incite like some arguing, which we have had a lack of lately, and it did. So that was kind of fun. Felt good to flex again. So we're going to talk about first round prospects that each of the 4 teams have been linked to, and what we do not want to see. Our deepest fears. Our deepest fear is that we are inadequate. I don't know the whole speech from Coach Carter, but it's beautiful. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've seen it, but I don't remember the specific.
Yeah, I know that's the first line. It's like our deepest fear is that we are inadequate, that we are like, I think it's powerful beyond measure. That doesn't sound right though. But anyway, so what I don't want to see from the Eagles, what you don't want to see from the Cowboys, what we collectively don't want to see for the Giants and the Commanders in terms of things. Again, the game is like things that would make them better. So that we
am
don't
I
want to
also
see.
saying what I do want the Eagles to do then, from my perspective?
No, the whole purpose is what we do not want to see. If you answer the other question, then it's a different question. It's a different
But
episode.
it's a different perspective, meaning that like if I'm saying what I don't want the Eagles to do, that would be something like bad in my mind versus what you would think is something good for them. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so
Like I don't
you're
want them
saying
to take this guy because I think he sucks.
okay.
And that's not what you would be saying because you're saying I don't want them to take this guy because I think he's good.
Okay.
Wouldn't it make more sense if I was like, I think I should say what I do want them to do? And if that lines up with what you think is bad.
I think that's a good spin. That's the best thing you've said so far today. So
I want I don't want us to play our hands first because then it's not fun for us to be like I want the Eagles to draft this player, and then like you disagree with that.
What are the words you want us to say? Let's go.
I think you should go first.
So you want me to tell you what I don't want to see from the
Yes.
Eagles, and
Yes.
so it just in the event that is like what you do want or whatever. I get what you're saying. Like you
Right,
don't want me
exactly.
Okay. So you were kind enough to finally add some notes to our rundown sheet, our Google Doc. The Philadelphia Eagles hold 2 picks in the first round at the moment, the 10th overall pick, which they got from the New Orleans Saints because they are dumb, and the 30th overall pick because they lost the Super Bowl. A reminder to everybody that the Miami Dolphins had to forfeit their first round pick this year. The Eagles are technically slotted at 31, but again, the Dolphins forfeiture bumps that up to 30th. That is only in the first round, just so everybody is aware. The other picks make more mathematical sense. So the players that you wrote down that are most connected to the Eagles, and this is like various mock drafts. Again, you want to explain where you curated these from?
Yeah, NFL mock draft database.com, I think, had kind of like a sampling of these players, which doesn't guarantee anything, but just a little what's the word? Like a good
sample, good focus group.
Survey, field survey. Yeah. Focus group.
Okay, so at 10, these are the players that you have. Again, so
these you have to read them all. I just was trying to give them to you for context of.
Okay. So, well, these are the names that I want to focus on. Devin Weatherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, Bijan Robinson, Jalen Carter, and maybe Lucas Van Ness. Those are the ones that like everything else is like incidental to me. I don't feel like passionate like one way or the other. Now, let me be very clear before I address the player portion of this. The thing that would annoy me the most, the thing that I want to see the least is the Eagles trading out of this or trading out in general. I do not want another full season where the Eagles have another first round pick like we had this whole year. So like that would be annoyance. And it wouldn't like concern me, but it would be a 10 out of 10 on the annoying scale. Sure. It's like I wouldn't be afraid, but I would be annoyed because it's so annoying how they have the first pick of all 4 NFC East teams. I would hate to just see them keep Dwight Schruting this, like turning this one magic bean into all this stuff. Anyway, that being said, as it relates to players, there was a moment when the Darius Slay stuff was going on that I thought like, oh man, they're gonna get Christian Gonzalez. I'm like, we're having our laugh now, but then that's really gonna suck come draft night. I feel like personally that's probably less likely, at least fundamentally with Darius Slay returning. So I feel like I don't have to worry about that. The Bijan thing, I would legitimately be interested. I would legitimately be interested to see how that would play out. I would obviously be rooting against it. He also went to the University of Texas. I went to Texas A&M University, so there's a natural discourse there for me. The Jalen Carter thing is an enigma, obviously, as it pertains to the whole NFL. Nobody has any idea like how this is going to go. So it would feel annoying in the sense of like the Jordan Davis thing was like, oh, how did he make it all the way to the Eagles type thing. So, I mean, I don't mean to say like I'm not afraid of the Eagles, but like nothing sends me into like a full blown panic. But I think the thing that would maybe birth the potential biggest fear is the Bijan thing. Like if the Eagles, the team who is like super forward thinking, analytics, blah, blah, blah. If they buck the trend, because that's the take, right? Like I know you've seen and like written about this at BGN, like everybody's like, oh, well, this never happens. Like we never get to see the top running back land with a great team that's already Super Bowl ready, blah, blah, blah. Like if Bijan lands with the Eagles and they're able to like, take their running game to the next level and preserve Jalen Hurts even more so, which I'm sure is an argument for Eagles fans towards this idea. And if they create this like revolution of running backs mattering again, that would be really, really, really frustrating. Like I'm sure it was frustrating to watch. You've talked with a lot of reverence for rookie Zeke. I would not want to be on the other side of that. Like, and I that would be my fear, is that would come and it would be this new offensive weapon. I think we all think, if we're honest with ourselves, that there's going to be some regression from Jalen Hurts from a production standpoint, not necessarily from a talent or skill standpoint. So if the Eagles were able to mitigate that with the addition of Bijan Robinson, that would be a big fear for me.
I think more than one thing can be true, as I like to say.
Where's the shirt?
I think back to when the Cowboys selected Zeke, and also when they extended him. I remember at the time thinking, like, this is a bad long-term move for the Cowboys. I think that was true, but it was also good news for the Cowboys in the short term that they could still have him for, I believe it was like the 2019 season at the time,
The
or whatever it
extension?
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and he was still good that year. So, and he didn't hold out and he wasn't away from the team anymore. Like, that was the short term value of that contract. It was a bad long term move, but it was a good short term move.
Well,
So I
and
think
to your point, the short term of his draft year was incredible.
same
And
thing.
just again, I'll let you go, but like I think people forget this with the history of it all. When they drafted him, Tony Romo was their quarterback. Like that was the whole like
Right.
vision, was that he was going to come in and be this like weapon for Tony Romo's offense, and that
And they
never
lost to Marco
happened.
Murray. Yeah.
Right, and it did work out, but again, like that was the vision at the moment that they submitted the card, so to speak.
And it resulted in a really successful 2016 season with him being a big part of why the Cowboys were so good and got the 1 seed ultimately that year. So I do think, I'm not ruling out that the Eagles could draft Bijan Robinson in this hypothetical world, and he would provide immense short-term value. I don't rule that out, but that's just not how they think. It's just not.
Right.
I'm so confident it's not going to happen. Again, you kind of like downplayed it in terms of like, well, you're like, every team wants a player who they think can be around for 10 years. Yeah, I get that. But like, again, with running back, there's really no precedent for a ceiling like that. That ceiling just does not really exist. So if you're taking that, you're really not going for a move like that. And I don't think that's what they're going to do at all. So yes, I do agree. It would kind of be very annoying for the Cowboys in the short term, but I think Cowboys fans over the long term should actually like that move and think it's not the best use of resources. For who I want the Eagles to take, kind of lines up with who I think they will take. I think they're really going to take one of 3 players to me. It's either going to be, and they all play for Georgia. It's either going to be Jalen Carter, who I don't think falls, because a long story short, I think either the Lions or Seahawks end up getting him at 5 or 6. I really have a hard time seeing him get by there. And then if he does, the Falcons or the Raiders or Falcons could take him. So I'm not going to say 0% chance, but I don't think it's likely. Nolan Smith, who I like a lot, and everyone wants to find like the next Micah Parsons, and I don't think he is that, because that's a really good player. You don't just get the next version of that player, but in that mold a little bit, and not too different from a body type from him, and also just a flat out, he's a dog, man. Like, and I know his numbers in terms of volume weren't great at Georgia, but if you look at his efficiency stats, his rate stats, they're they're like top 2, top 3 in terms of like runs. He's top 1 in run stop. He's top 3 in sack rate, top 2 in pressure rate. Like, I think he's underrated, and he's extremely athletic. And I love the idea of pairing him with Hassan Reddick. Those are 2 athletic pass rushers that could create a lot of terror. I think you should be a little bit more afraid of that one. And then the final one that Cowboys fans should not be afraid of, kind of like by opposite. It's like the opposite of the Bijan thing. It's like, this is not a move to fear in the short term, but it is one to not like fear, but kind of be annoyed about in the long term, is if they take Broderick Jones or an offensive lineman. The Eagles don't really need short-term help there, but if the Eagles continue to build through their trenches and continue to fortify like the best offensive line, or one of the very best offensive lines in the NFL, it's not a sexy pick for Eagles fans. It's not one they're going to be excited about. It's not one that Cowboys fans or anyone else in the NFC East is going to be like, oh no, the Eagles took Broderick Jones. But again, I think that kind of speaks to a larger point here about, the Eagles are still kind of doing smart things and fortifying the trenches and preventing against the disaster seasons that they had in 2012 and 2020, where the offensive line totally just went to shambles.
I think that's where that's the the obvious opposite end of the spectrum from the Bijan thing, and that's why I think we're also interested to see are they like fully ready and willing to say let's spend a little bit, right? Like let's throw a little bit of caution, let's pee into the wind, and let's draft Bijan. Like, again, if that is even possible. And I mean, again, the Bijan thing is going to be super interesting no matter where he winds up going, because I know there's some chatter that Detroit could take him, whatever, blah blah blah. But are they willing to kind of do the anti long-term thing, or to your point, are they going to be a little bit more patient? It's hard to say no to that super fun thing in the moment. So that's interesting. So hold up, what is your don't want to see thing? We have to get to the second pick.
I did the do want to see though, because I'm not you know what I'm saying here? This is what I was talking about earlier.
I
If
know, but
I
so like,
say
what's the like? I would be upset as an Eagles fan pick.
I would be upset with them taking Lucas Van Ness, someone
That
who like didn't
felt
even
like,
start at Iowa.
felt like it feels like a reach, like drafting for potential type thing, especially with a top 10 pick. Like it
Yeah.
is the 10th pick, but still like
Again,
top 10.
it didn't start at Iowa, and you're drafting this guy with like the 10th pick. I mean, they'd probably if they took someone like him, it'd probably be in a trade down. I'm also not like thrilled about corner. I like Witherspoon a lot, but you have Bradbury and Slay here, so like he might not even play the first year or
I think
so.
that's
Like
Broderick Jones-ish though. Like that's the same like principle that you're talking about, right? Like right, we're just riding this thing out. We're restocking. You know what I mean? Like this may not be one of our Pro Bowl players this year. So
it's a
like
little different for me. It's a little different because they need a backup left tackle. They lost Andre Dillard, so they could use more depth on the offensive line there. And Lane Johnson could also only be around for a year or two. It's more of a premium position to me than cornerback is. So it's a little different, but I get what you're saying.
30th overall in was it Mel Kiper's mock draft on Tuesday? The Eagles did trade out of this pick, right? With
Yeah,
Seattle.
yeah. I'm getting. They ultimately made like 4 picks in the top 62 with his scenario.
I think in the mock they picked up 2 seconds, so they didn't pick up a future. You're not picking up a future first for 30.
Right.
And I think this was for Hendon Hooker, which I think is an interesting potential.
For the Seahawks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, obviously. Yeah. But feels very Teddy Bridgewater-ish, right? Like even Lamar Jackson-ish. Let's go get the 5th-year option. Like totally very possible, obviously. I mean, so the first name you have listed here is Jahmyr Gibbs. That's been mocked to the Eagles a lot. That would annoy me a little bit if they don't take Bijan, obviously. You know what I mean? Like if they do the smart thing, like say they take Broderick Jones at 10, oh man, this is annoying. Or if they trade out, whatever, blah, blah. And then they still kind of get to like have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
And get, like that would be, again, it wouldn't inspire, like there's truly nothing that would like inspire fear. And I don't say that again in a trolling way, but that would be the like, that's just sort of.
They did something that's smart, and they also got the fun thing. Like they got the best of both worlds. Yeah,
exactly.
That, or God forbid, I don't think it's going to happen. But if Bijan fell to 30, like that would be,
if Bijan fell to 30, that would obviously mean that he passed through the Cowboys. And there's a large sector. We'll talk about this in a moment, but like there's a large sector, amazingly, of Cowboys fans who want to see them. And obviously he went to the University of Texas, but like who wanted to see the team draft him. So if the Cowboys passed him and he still wound up with Philly, that would highly, highly, highly annoy a lot of people.
That's what I'm rooting for in that case.
I mean, we've already kind of touched on the like foundational aspects of this, like the logic involved. So like, I mean, Kalisha Cansey would annoy me a little bit too.
I really like him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Cowboys fans who would be very happy with that being the pick at 26. Osiris Torrance is another one. I mean, if you got that is the Broderick Jones argument, whatever, like keep replenishing, keep filling, keep,
well, yeah, if you got like Nolan Smith and you added him. Yeah.
Right. So who's the pick you don't want at 30? I think that's the important thing to talk about here.
Yeah, that's good. I don't think there is anyone that I'm like super against.
It's 30. Like it's hard to make like a bad pick at 30.
Exactly. Overall. There's no one that I look at there and I'm like, oh, I hate this pick. Although from a short term, like interesting, fun standpoint, like I always like to frame things. I get why there's an argument for Bijan at 10. Fans don't give a crap about like the most prudent long term thing, and they shouldn't have to necessarily. They want to have fun. I get it. Football's supposed to be fun, but there's also something to be said for the long term analysis of what we do. Basically, it's more of our job that I think to kind of think along those lines. Generally speaking, so there's nothing there that really I look at the options like Jahmyr Gibbs, Kalisha Cansey, Brian Branch, Brian Brise, Osiris Torrance, DeJuan Jones. There's nothing. I don't even if they took like Lucas Van Ness there, I still don't.
No, that's a fine pick.
But okay, fine. Like it's okay to risk it there. So I think that's kind of the takeaway there. And honestly, I don't think they're going to pick at 30. I do think they're going to trade
out of that pick.
Yes,
not bad. Okay, so are we ready to move on to the Cowboys?
I guess that would be the most annoying thing to me, from a standpoint of like I'm waiting all night. From our job perspective, I'm waiting. Okay, they made the pick at 10. I don't want coverage.
That pick's like 11 Eastern, and then
like, I'm waiting.
The other thing is like, again, like a little bit of a peek behind the curtain at what we do. Like one of the things that is like a staple of the draft is like the post round press conference that each team does, and so like, I mean, sometimes like a team like will start that up, like even while the draft is still going on, like a team they picked in the top 10, and you can kind of have your night be done early, but like, so you're waiting for that pick and then the post-draft press conference after. So,
and let's say there's
night.
like a fun player on the board, like a Jahmyr Gibbs, who like I'm not devastated about missing out on necessarily, but it's like, or Cansey, and it's like you could have that guy and you trade it down and I had to wait for this. That would be not like devastating, but it would be like kind of annoying.
So as it pertains to the Cowboys, the names you have on the list here: Bijan, Darnell Wright. That would shock me. Kalisha Cansey, the aforementioned. 3 tight ends: Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, Darnell Washington. Mayer was the latest player who Mel Kiper mocked to the Cowboys. He's really like all the Michael Mayer from Notre Dame.
Okay.
Quentin Johnston, local guy. Jalen Hyatt, Zay Flowers, Deontay Banks, Joey Porter Jr., and Will McDonald, who you had on the Eagles list as well. You're first year.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like the Bijan thing applies here too, in terms of I think it would be annoying short term, but not the most prudent move long term, especially when you're also paying Tony Pollard whatever they paid him $10 million this year. Like I just don't think that's the right. That'd be good to me in terms of I don't think the Cowboys are being incredibly smart over the long term if they're doing that. I think it's a little bit of a desperation move. Cansey is the guy I like a lot, and I think he's going to be underrated because of his size and people were counting him out. But man, his production is really good. And just watching him play, he's so quick off the ball. Like, I don't care if he's smaller. Like, guys aren't going to be able to block him because he's such a quick first step that he's going to be able to create a lot of havoc. And I know the Cowboys have not really had someone like that in a while, it feels like, in the interior who can
They refuse. Do you know the last time they drafted a defensive tackle in the first round?
No.
It was 1991. They took us from Maryland. Yeah.
I was born. Yeah, so I would say him. Like I look at the tight ends here, and I know it's a good tight end class, but like I don't think like a tight end from this class is like that's the difference maker for this offense. I think it could be a nice piece, but I'm not like, oh no, that we're done for. Same thing with receiver. I don't think this receiver class is strong enough to the point where like, oh no, how do we stop that guy and Brandon Cooks and CD Lamb? So I don't. Yeah, I don't. It's kind of like in a similar boat to you. There's no one here that has me shaking in my boots. I would say the most short-term Bijan, and then Kalisha Cansey.
How would you feel before I answer about like if it's one of the tight ends? Like, is that like, you know, it's not like ha ha ha, but is it just like, okay, we'll see? Like it is a TBD sort of thing.
I think in my mind, I could be wrong about this, but like it's kind of like, okay, they just replaced Dalton Schultz. Like it'll be that level player, like a good player, but like I'm not like, oh no, this player is like a generational guy, and I'm terrified of him.
Do you remember when they drafted Dalton Schultz, by the way?
No.
It was the Dallas Goedert draft. And that it's important in Cowboys history, at least. It was like 2 days after Jason Witten retired for the first time. And so everybody was like, is this the future? And he kind of wound up being that, but like it took a lot for him to like, again, we've talked about this a lot of BTB, but like, you know, so, you know, it was a big kind of a mess that first year. And then Witten came back. So he got buried on the depth chart, and then they gave Blake Jarwin the big contract, and then he got hurt that first game. It took all of that for Dalton Schultz to finally get his time to shine, is my point.
And the Eagles traded ahead of the Cowboys to get Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, the Eagles actually reportedly were in on Blake Jarwin at the end of that 17 season, and that was such a like butterfly effect moment. Because it was that interest from Philly that caught, and then obviously they ultimately wound up drafting Dallas Goedert, but that led Dallas to finally cutting Kellen Moore to save Jarwin and promote him to the active roster to protect him, and then that sent Kellen Moore into the coaching profession. So interesting sort of, you know, butterfly effect, like I said. The Bijan, like, so I have been like closed-minded, not even like willing to entertain the idea of Bijan. For obvious reasons. And I do think like as a society, we've gone a little too far with the running backs don't matter thing, right? Like running backs matter. Like you can spend a top, you know, if you want to call it first round pick, whatever, you want to spend a day 2 pick on them. Like there are some worlds where that's not like the dumbest thing of all time, right? There's some recent evidence to suggest that is the case. But again, so I don't want to like operate from a place of like the scar that is like healing over from, you know, because there's a big difference between the 26th overall pick and the 4th overall pick, right? And I was actually today, Eric Edholm, I think, has Bijan as his number 2 overall prospect in this class. So like you get that dude at 26, obviously, like, there's logic to that. And obviously what he can help this offense do in the short term. Oh, like I think for the purposes of this conversation, we could call the short term the life of his rookie contract, right? Like that's the return on that is immense from a production standpoint, you would think. But again, I mean, is that the most
That's not even necessarily true. Immense, I don't even know if it's a great word for it, because he instantly enters the league as what, like the top 10th paid most running back instantly? Like that's not great value.
This is a different question, but he instantly enters the league, whoever drafts him, by the way, as the what best running back from a talent perspective. I'm asking you that question.
I don't really I can't think of it off the top of my head, but that's the ceiling, by the way. And the floor is like he might not be, he could get hurt. He might not be very good at all.
I would say who's the best? I would say Christian McCaffrey is probably the best running back in the NFL, right?
Sure.
So who's number 2 even on that list? Right now.
It's tough because Kamara's coming off injuries, but if he's healthy,
Dalvin Cook had his moment. Derrick
Henry's getting up there. It's tough to say.
Joe Mixon's taking a step back. Zeke, obviously. Saquon,
Nick Chubb obviously should be up there.
Okay, Nick Chubb, yeah, we overlooked. Saquon, Saquon was the exception, returning to form. Even Jonathan Taylor,
Josh
year ago,
Jacobs is up there.
But a year ago, people were like, Jonathan Taylor, fell off a cliff. And a lot of that has to do with the team, but that's the point, right? If the team isn't good, the running back sucks, right? So, but again, I would not be opposed to this. I used to, I say used to, it was a few months ago. I was not in love with the idea of a tight end at 26 overall. Since 2000, I believe. Do you know how many rookie tight ends, just general, not even first round picks, have had 1,000 yards there? And that's not the ultimate measurement, but have had 1,000 yards their rookie season?
It's not a lot. I know tight end is a position that takes time.
It's 1, and it was very recently. It was Kyle Pitts in 2021. And that's not to say again, the Cowboys could win the Super Bowl, and if their rookie tight end has 833 yards, is it a failure? No. If he made some big time catches, that's obviously what matters. So I've come around on the idea, but I do think, to me, it is amazing how and I'm not coming for the mock drafters, but every mock drafter's idea behind the tight end pick for the Cowboys is well, they didn't replace Dalton Schultz. It's this isn't we're not it reminds me of when people draft their fantasy teams and they're like, oh, I don't have a tight end yet. You know what I mean? Let me go get, it's well, what else, what are your other options? Would you rather fortify your bench, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's some low hanging fruit. The fever dream scenario for me is kind of the CeeDee Lamb scenario 3 years ago when he fell. Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's my number one. That's my nirvana.
I agree with that. I just didn't have him here because I think he's going to go higher than that. Right. And he was not on the mocks, but I do agree with that. Although I have heard some things about him that make me wonder. I think he's going to be very good, but I also think there's some personality things there that could
I will say, I think Darnell Wright here would probably, of the names you listed, would probably be my my most flat.
Did you see his tweet? I'm sure you saw that.
Oh yeah,
dude, big loser energy. Honestly, I saw that and he's off my board for the Eagles. I didn't want him anyway, but I don't want him.
Even that aside, if they want to draft an interior offensive lineman, the Osiris Torrance, fine. Because we're all, Tyler Smith is going to be the left tackle of the future. You know what I mean? You're gonna have a need at guard eventually. They still right now kind of don't really have a true swing tackle, but it is kind of Tyler Smith. And if he is your swing tackle, then who's your backup, interior guard? So that would make me feel better about things in a lot of ways. Even Steve Avila, there's a lot of people who want to see the Cowboys take him at 58. And then if they were to take him here, that it would be categorized as some sort of reach. I wouldn't feel terrible about that. But if they took Darnell Wright, that's probably of the names listed here, maybe Jalen Hyatt a little bit. I feel when the draft process started, everybody was so hot on Jalen Hyatt, and that has cooled considerably. And I felt like I would feel this way about Zay Flowers. But I've come around a little bit to him, and I would love to see that, just because the Cowboys don't draft small wide receivers. I would love to see, just the times, you know what I mean? I would love to see that happen. So, you have Joey Porter Jr. here. I just don't think that's happening. I would love that for what it's worth. A lot of people think the Cowboys drafted Stephon Gilmore. What is it? Oh, we aren't. That's your tweet. But
people so mad.
But yeah, if the question was like one of the tight ends or Joey Porter Jr., if Joey somehow fell, like that's to me the like example of like, oh, we just have to fill the roster. We have to fill like a starter at tight ends. We have to take a tight end. No. Like Stephon Gilmore isn't guaranteed to be here next year. You know what I mean? Like Trayvon Diggs at the moment at least doesn't have a new contract. Draft Joey Porter Jr. Like like that's a better use of that resource to me. So I wouldn't feel bad about the tight end, but I would. It's not like the slam dunk for me. It's just like an easy layup.
I think Joey Porter Jr. kind of has some downside potential. I could see him like, I don't know, just coming into the league and there's the knocks on him for being, like very grab happy and whatnot. So I think that one has some variance is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Well,
I do think offensive line would be smart for you guys. Like it's kind of like the Eagles. It'd be boring, but it would be smart.
Right. Okay. Let's take a break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Giants and the Commanders. Welcome back. While we were gone, Brandon,
you told me we were gone. I decided
you told me
I was going to
what your favorite macaroni and cheese topping is.
Ooh. I mean, I don't know that I love a topping. Macaroni and cheese.
If you want to say like some sort of like crust, you know what I mean? Some sort
like,
of like,
what else is there besides like
I once had maybe
crumbs.
This isn't a topping, but I once had lobster mac and cheese that I would.
Okay, so like I would something that could be mixed into it. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like a component to the mac and cheese.
I thought you literally meant like the top layer because that's only usually like breadcromms. I'm like, what else are you putting on there? Like
like a component. Crumbs. There we go.
The best mac and cheese actually. So I've had the Cowboys mac and cheese. Jimmy sent me some. It's really good.
What? He sent it like he took it home and then
he had the Cowboys send him some because he couldn't make it to the Christmas game, I think, because he had COVID in part.
Okay.
Or he couldn't make it. In any case, he couldn't make it. So he asked the Cowboys if they would send him some to sample for his
press box review,
press box spread review. And then to the Cowboys' credit, they sent him like a ton too. So
for anyone who's unaware, because this is like a thing for you, but in the Cowboys press box, they have, I mean, it is like, I've never been to any other press box, but like, I would have a hard time imagining that anybody else challenges the Cowboys. Like it is.
And I've always given Jerry Jones credit for that kind of stuff. Like he gets that kind of stuff right.
Insane. Like and I mean, you're talking like, I mean, whatever, but there is this mac and cheese that is like the other things kind of rotate, like the different, proteins or whatever, the different greens and salads and even like the cookies and treats. But like the mac and cheese is there every single game and not just Cowboys games. And it is like a truffle, I guess maybe the best way to put it. There's some like breadcrumb components. I would almost eat it like a casserole. Like you could, if you threw like a protein in there, I would eat nothing but that.
It's great. But I have had really good mac and cheese from the Eagles press box. Funny enough, their buffalo mac and cheese
rent free.
It was great. It was amazing. And
I don't really like buffalo sauce.
I know some people just aren't into it, but I like a really good buffalo mac and cheese. Or if that's not your speed, they also did a jalapeno mac and cheese, and that was also not as good to me as the buffalo chicken, especially because it didn't have the protein. But jalapeno mac and cheese also very good.
Okay. The New York Giants. You have 7 names listed here. Obviously, a lot of these are similar. So I didn't I have left the Eagles banner up. Oh, I just realized this. So Dallas Cowboys 26. Whoops. My bad. The New York Giants hold the 25th overall pick. So right before the Cowboys, obviously. The names you have here: Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Emmanuel Forbes, Deontay Banks, Osiris Torrance. We've talked about Brian Branch and Jalen Hyatt. I think the one that would bother me the most is maybe Zay Flowers, because I really do like, this is not unique, but like dude feels like Antonio Brown. You know what I mean? Like, and that would be so annoying. Like to have him join and to join an offense that is commanded by Brian Dable, like that would really, really, really suck. Even Jordan Addison. I mean, like, I know a lot of people are like connecting him to Pittsburgh because of the Kenny Pickett thing, but like, man, like adding another dynamic playmaker to that offense would really suck to see.
I think this is going to be a really interesting draft for the Giants because last year it was kind of chalk for them at the top, right? In terms of like, oh, they could get Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. Like that was,
it was easy too. Like more than chalk. It was easy.
Right. They had it there for them. They did it. By the way, Evan Neal didn't even play that well as a rookie, at least relative to expectation. Neither did Andrew Thomas. He got better. So not writing the book on his career by any means, but I'm saying like, it's not like they definitely even nailed that from the jump. And also Thibodeau, like, I don't think he was quite as amazing as people thought, like the steal that he could be. Like again, people thought that he should maybe be the number one pick last year at one point. I don't think he was that kind of player as a rookie. And again, he might get better. I think he improved a bit as the season gone along. But my point here, and I remember this being our good friend Ed Valentine talking about this after the Giants draft. Kind of after that, it was like, all right, who are these other guys? Wan'Dale Robinson did some good things before getting hurt. We'll see if he can kind of recover after that serious injury. Rest of the draft class, like, and it's not like you're going to hit every pick and get studs all along the way. But my point here is, I don't think we necessarily know just how good of drafters the Giants are under Joe Sheen, just because of last year. So more interested to see. And I think if they take a receiver, it's going to be interesting because they kind of need to, right? They kind of almost have to, given their depth chart at that position. And that just kind of concerns me a little bit. To your point about Dalton Schultz and the Cowboys, like getting mocked all these tight ends and feeling like they have to do it because it's the hole. Well, that's how sometimes you reach and you mess up a pick. So I'm a little bit worried if the Giants take a receiver. I'm not saying like they could take someone, it could work out, it could be awesome for them, but it could also be a sign to me that they're reaching. Or center is another position to watch for them because they never filled that. They lost John Feliciano. And they have some internal options like they could use, but it doesn't seem like they're really thrilled about any of those guys definitely stepping in there. So I'd also worry if they kind of like force a pick there. What about you?
I mean, I said it. I think, there's a lot of people who think Zay Flowers is the best receiver in the class. And a lot of people have Jackson Smith and Jigba going first just because of the potential. And like he had the lost season. So you can kind of like talk yourself into that. But like if the number one receiver, and I know it's not a strong receiver class, so like saying that isn't the most impressive statement, or isn't as impressive of a statement as it is in years past. But that being said, like if a super dynamic playmaker, I don't care who it is, like our fear level at least exists relative to the Giants now, when it didn't a year ago, right? We were still a little bit out. Like I'm not saying we sit here and we're like losing sleep the night before either of our teams play them, but like they're a factor now. They're a thing that we have to consider. And so yeah, I mean, like adding to the almost any offensive skill player bothers me here. Like, especially like say it is Zay Flowers. Now all of a sudden your offense from a skill position standpoint is Zay Flowers, Darren Waller, Sterling Shepard's back, Darius Slayton, Saquon Barkley, and the Saquon thing's just a 1-year thing, so you don't have to like worry about the long-term effects of that. You get to have the short-term rewards. And Daniel Jones, who we learned last year at least, was capable of overseeing a talented group, and Brian Dable, who knows how to kind of like press the right places and pull at the right strings. So, I mean, that would bother me a lot.
I think if they
especially if like if maybe like what it's like when the draft's like kind of falling and you get to like 5 picks before your team and you're like, okay, like if this player just kind of makes it through, we just got to hold on a little bit longer.
Right.
And if like as a Cowboys fan, we're like, oh my gosh, Zay Flowers might be there, and you kind of start like imagining that world, and then just to get sniped right before, that would add to my frustration.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely an angle I hadn't thought about. And certainly I don't know if the Eagles and Giants are really targeting the same kind of players there, but will be worth monitoring. I think if they took like Cyrus Torrance, I think that could be smart for them, but again, not exciting because of the offensive line nature of the position. Deontay Banks, I guess, is someone I might look at. I know you kind of already made the case for the receiver thing. I just don't know with these receivers that I feel like so certain about any of them that I think it has the ceiling to be a really good move, depending on who they take. But I also think corner could be interesting because if they take like a Deontay Banks, who's kind of been getting some hype here, I've seen some people think like he is the top corner. If they get him and pair him with Adoree Jackson, then they have a pretty good corner group all of a sudden.
We're an Adoree Jackson show. We love Adoree here on the NFC East.
So, am I shaking in my boots at that move? No, I don't think there's anything the Giants that can do unless they, I guess the biggest thing they could do is trade up for, but see, that's the thing. If they big trade up for like Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think that's just a misread of where they are. I think that signals that they think they're much closer than they actually are. And it would be a nice player for them, but I don't think that's like, oh crap, like everyone's screwed just because they got him. I think that's kind of some desperation in there. So I think the Giants are in a bad spot, to be clear. I don't think they're in a good spot in terms of how the value shakes out. I think whatever their pick is, it's kind of just going to be fine. They might want to consider trading back if they're going to be honest with themselves and get some more value.
Let's wrap up with the Washington Commanders, who hold the 16th overall pick, finish last in the division.
By the way, real
Obviously,
quick on the Giants thing, sorry, like that sentiment I just said, I've seen Ed Valentine say that a lot too at Big Blue View. Like he's I've seen a number of his mock drafts, and he gets to that pick, and he's like, I don't really love my options here.
I mean, it's a like you said earlier. We're gonna see how great they really are at this. Like it's not easy, but
Yep.
it's not difficult to like figure things out when you're picking in the top 10 or top 5 or top whatever it was, top 6 was it in the 7, both your picks were top 7 picks last year. This is where, and even then, like like people love to be like, oh, the Cowboys like always like dominate the first round. It's like, well, they're picking one of 32 guys, like, you know what I mean? Like this is, you should, like, you know what I mean? Like the true challenge is obviously like later in the draft, but like again, when you get deeper down, it gets harder, obviously. The Commanders, man, tough scene.
Also a tough spot to be in.
Exactly. You have Darnell Wright, Joey Porter Jr., Nolan Smith, Devin Witherspoon, Broderick Jones, and Paris Johnson Jr. They're too far back. They're out of range for one of the quarterbacks, even if Will Levis falls. There's just no way that's happening. I mean, there are a lot of people who, again, we talked about the trade that Mel Kiper had, for Seattle going up to get Hendon Hooker. Like, maybe that's like the panic pick here.
He had a pre-draft visit there.
I mean, yeah. So, or maybe they're a candidate to trade back. Like maybe, again, maybe somebody's in love with JSN or Zay Flowers, you know what I mean? Whatever. And they trade back, and like, that wouldn't be the worst thing, I don't think, for them. But, I mean, there's nothing here, dude, that I'm like, oh my gosh. I would be a little bit bothered if Joey Porter Jr. were there. It would feel like Terry McLaurin-ish to me, like a really good player on a team that just is kind of like crap around him. But other than that, like, at least of the players you listed, like, I'm good. Like,
I'd be annoyed if Nolan Smith fell to them. That'd be kind of annoying, I think, with their defensive line and some of the things they already have going there. I don't love that. And also like the character of, he's someone that in theory, under a new ownership and a revamped Washington Commanders culture, he's someone who would be part of that culture change in terms of his football and character and everything. So I would like him to stay away. He's like a big winner energy kind of player. I would not like to see them get him, especially if the Eagles pass on him. And then Witherspoon too. I don't think he's going to last to there, but also kind of in that class though. Honestly, Devin Witherspoon is also kind of like that dog mentality kind of guy that I would not like to see end up in Washington. So I think those are my top two guys who I'd really prefer them not to take.
This question just really isn't fair. Because there's no players. Not a single. They could have the number 1 overall pick, and there's not a player that we're worried about because of the team and the franchise and the culture and the organization, right? Like it's fighting a losing fight, no matter who you are. I mean, like I think we were both. I know this predates the NFC East Mixtape, but we were both probably bothered by Chase Young. Like, oh man, they got this like super freak of a prospect, highly productive player, et cetera, et cetera. And he actually also been good for them. You know what I mean? But like, what has it translated to? Like a division title with a below 500 record when everything collapsed around them. Like, it's just, like you can even luck into like a generational talent and it not work out for you. That's just who the Commanders are as a franchise.
It's a lame duck franchise right now. Like nothing really matters until they get the new ownership and they get the new coaching like that. They're just treading water right now. There's no really kind of needle moving things happening in that. With that said, I guess I haven't done a ton of work on the quarterbacks because, not really in the Eagles' purview right now. But the ceiling of a Hendon Hooker draft pick, the ceiling of that move could move the needle, right? Like in the best case scenario where he turns into like a legit player. So from that sense, I almost would like them to not take a quarterback just because of the upside of that move. Again, I don't think that's the most likely outcome for that pick. But because there is a ceiling where you take a quarterback, like the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, and it turns out to be a lot better than you expect, I guess I would like to see them avoid taking a quarterback early on, just so that like shot in the dark, if you will, to reference a Survivor term, doesn't exist. That like very unlikely thing, but in theory it could work out for them, as opposed to if they take a cornerback, like what's the best possible outcome, even if that player is like the next Sauce Gardner or whoever. Like that's not going to move the needle for them. But the quarterback, if he ends up being like his top percentile,
yeah. If you stumble into like look at Dak, I mean, you know what I mean. Like if you stumble into a quarterback, like your whole franchise changes. So I agree with that. Shout out to Shot in the Dark, one of the dumber twists in Survivor.
How do you like the season? We never talked about it.
It's really good. I'm a little overwhelmed with the like number of idols and fake idols. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm just like, it's a little bit much, but it always kind of stabilizes at the merge. That's what, we've gotten there. Last week got the first boot. Everyone's got a buff. Feeling pretty solid about where we're headed from here. I can't say as much for this season of The Mandalorian. Tough scene. This season of Ted Lasso, pretty good. And you're not a Succession fan, but holy crap. Sunday's episode of Succession.
I heard you say good things about it. I've heard good things said. Maybe I'll go revisit that one. Is that an HBO show?
It is. It was.
Yeah, this is my problem. I don't have HBO. Someone out there, give me your HBO.
It was one of the most incredible episodes of television I've ever seen. Like, I would put it up there.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you heard me tell Jeremy, like, it was up there with like the greatest Breaking Bad episodes, the greatest Game of Thrones episodes.
Survivor might extend to 90 minutes, by the way. I'm not sure if that would cross your radar. Nothing official on that front, but there is some like credible buzz out there that it could expand from.
I would be a fan of that.
I think that's the perfect runtime. 2 hours would be too long. I mean, honestly, I could watch like 5 hours of Survivor. Nothing is too long when it comes to Survivor, but in terms of like realistic, keeping the product not watered down, I would like to see 90 minutes, because then it's 60 minutes of actual time.
60 minutes is also an actual show, but
Actually, 63 minutes, 62.
The challenge on MTV has, like, I wouldn't say permanently, but like they have a lot of 90-minute episodes, and it's really satisfying, to your point. Good like contentious subject to close on. I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, my friend Jimmy Kemsky, about Succession. And I brought up something. It pains me to agree with Aaron Rodgers on anything, but a long time ago I heard Aaron Rodgers on the Rich Eisen show, and he said that we should have like a fundamental understanding as a society that there's a 24-hour rule after like a moment like this past week's episode of Succession, right? Like this like seminal moment in a series, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because something happened, obviously. And there were all sorts of people like tweeting spoilers, posting spoilers, whatever, that we should have a 24-hour, like it should be understood. It should be implicitly understood that everybody has to, wait 24 hours because, people have lives, people have this, people have that, whatever. Not everybody can watch it in that immediate moment, but that 24 hours later, you've had enough time. Like I think that's a fair rule. I really don't want to like agree with Aaron, obviously, but like that's a good rule of thumb.
Your beacon in life, Aaron Rodgers. I get it. I don't know. There's no good answer. It's tough because, it's tough for me sometimes because I'll be watching Survivor on delay, even like the same night. I just can't watch it right at 8. Like
right. Yeah. It's like an hour and a half or 2 hours.
So I need to, but I do kind of try to do a good job of like just scrolling past those tweets on Twitter when I see the avatar and I know it's like Rob Sesternino or whoever. Not that like he typically tweets out spoilers, but anything that's even like a soft spoiler or kind of like points to something. I feel like people in general, when it comes to live tweeting stuff, could probably do a better job of like reacting to things, but not giving it away. You know what I mean? Like, wow, that was crazy. You know what I mean? Like kind of reacting to something.
That was epic. That was wild. That was
not
insane.
Like literally posting like the screen cap or like being like, wow, I can't believe this guy killed that girl. Like that's, like that's just, you could probably have expressed your emotion in a way that didn't actually just plainly spell out what happened. So I think some people need to do a better job of self-policing there a little bit and could be a little bit more.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and I think that self-policing, there should be a 24-hour prerequisite. We all adopt this rule as a society. And after 24 hours, you want to tweet like the script, you know what I mean? What happened, the exact sequence, like by all means. But you know what I mean? Like, I think we should have to wait 24 hours. That's a common courtesy for our fellow human.
Yeah. I don't know. It depends. Like again, I've talked about Survivor before, my friend James, he only has the time to watch it on Friday nights, so that's when he gets to it. So it's beyond the 24-hour thing there. But
what is something? We'll end here. What is something you've had spoiled for you, like a big moment in a show or something or whatever, and that like you always remember that? I have something in mind too, but like, what's your thing?
I have a question for you after this. It's quick.
Okay.
After you say your thing, very vividly. Love my Aunt Holly very much, but she totally just spoiled the end of, was it I forget, is it what's the Star Wars one that's not like the one that the newer Star Wars, the one that everyone likes, the movie, not a show, Rogue One. I couldn't think of it. That's the movie that led to Andor. Yeah, that's the one where Leia is at the end, right? And the surprise.
Yes.
And well, I think my aunt for some reason had thought we did see it. I think my dad and I were like, "Oh no, we did not see that yet." And for some reason, she misinterpreted or whatever, and she just like said it to us, and we were like, "What?" Because it was just like I didn't even know she was talking about it first. But yeah, so that was spoiled pretty bad. I mean, does that really matter a ton? No, but it was
No,
a bummer.
that's not a. I have some examples that are way more consequential than
It
that.
was a
But
bummer though, because like when we saw it happen, I was like, oh, yeah,
yeah, like what it was meant to be this like what, and like you didn't
yeah,
have that effect.
would have been cool. Didn't
So
ruin anything, but it was just like,
three things for me. They're all quick. One, my friend Jimmy, who I brought up, I think we're safe here at this point, and I'll say this right now: if you don't want any moment of pop culture spoiled for you, stop listening. But okay, so when Joffrey died in Game of Thrones, that night, that night before I saw the episode, my stupid friend Jimmy, I saw him tweet, "The king is dead," and so it's like, why did you have to tweet that? Like that's my point.
Right.
Like why you could have totally tweeted like, "Wow, I can't believe that happened." You know what I
Right.
mean? Whatever. Like, why did you have to be
Exactly.
that explicit?
Mhm.
So like I've like for any time anybody brings that up, like I always think of that moment. Another one, actually Star Wars related. My friend Kyle, when episode 7 came out, which was like a big deal, right? Because it was like, oh, like it's back, right? Like they're relaunching the new trilogy, whatever. In our group text, all of our friends, he said, "I heard Han dies," and we were like, "What the hell, dude? Like, what's your problem? Like, why are you telling us this?" And so he was like, "Well, I don't know if it's true. Like, I saw it on the internet." We were like, "Why
Don't
would you
say it.
tell us this?" So we were so upset with him. And then when they were on the bridge, him and Ben, I was like, "Don't do it, don't." And then I was
Do it.
so
Did
angry.
it.
Last one, I accidentally spoiled something, kind of like you brought up with your aunt. It was an episode of Grey's Anatomy, and I was talking to my friend Mike about it, and it was like that like Saturday, whatever, and we were all at dinner, and I was like, man, this week's episode of Grey's was really crazy. Like again, I was right, I was correct, I was fair in how I approached this, and he was like, remind me what happened or like the beginning, because I don't remember if I watched. And I told him like the beginning, first few moments, like something super inconsequential. And he was like, "Oh yeah," and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he told me something that did happen, and I was like, "Yeah," and he said, "Yeah, I watched that episode." And I said, "Can you believe Henry died?" And he was like, "Henry died?" It's like, yeah. I was like, "You just told me you watched it," and turns out he had fallen asleep and forgot.
Wow.
So,
well, that's on him.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was just a funny story. But okay, your question.
I just wanted to. Oh, by the way, did you know? Have I mentioned before that my Aunt Holly is my mom's twin, and
No.
then
Wow.
my dad also is a twin. Both of my parents are twins.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
That's cool.
It's pretty weird.
That's very cool.
They're both fraternal, not identical, for what it's worth. But if they were
Wow.
identical, then my cousins would be my half siblings in terms of like the same amount of blood,
like genetic
DNA.
makeup.
Yeah, like the genetic makeup, that would be the equivalent
Do
of
your
a
cousins look alike?
half sibling. Nah, I wouldn't say super. Maybe maybe a little bit my dad's nephew, my aunt's son, my cousin in that regard, but not totally. Um,
Wait a minute. So they're both twins.
yeah.
But are your parents? So my mom's cousin. We're really far. We're about to get out of here. But my mom has a cousin, and her parents. So my mom's aunt. My
Mhm.
mom's cousin's parents are siblings, or I'm sorry, siblings
Confusing.
that are. My mom and my aunt are double cousins. Like their fathers
Yes.
and mothers are both siblings. Because I'm saying like two brothers married two sisters. That's what I'm saying. Like
There's something like that in my family, yeah, where like my uncle, who I'm not related to, just through marriage, married to my dad's sister. My dad's twin sister, her husband.
okay,
There's also another connection to my dad's sister, like their in-law. There's a marriage there. So yeah, there is some kind of like,
yeah.
I don't know what to call that, but there's some kind of like double connection there.
But so like your cousins that you're talking about are not your double cousins. They're just cousins
No.
from your parents'
Yes.
twin.
Just cousin
So
from my parents' twins.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, last
I'm
thing.
caught up. Okay, I'm caught up.
Shout
Your
out
question.
to loyal listener Elizabeth Hazer, who
Ah.
you know, Holden's partner, who just had a very successful art show. It was really cool. RJ was at this location in Philly, had her work featured there. I believe she sold a print, her first print. If you want to follow Elizabeth Hazier, who does weddings everywhere, she'll travel. So it doesn't matter. Like if this isn't just Philly area, but in theory, RJ, if you want to get married again or know anyone who wants to get married, you can contact Elizabeth Hazier. You can find her on Instagram, Hazier Photo, all together there.
What is the Twitter? Because I think that was a subject of consternation for me.
What?
Her Twitter.
Her Twitter is not a professional account. I think that's more of a personal account.
That makes sense. Why I may or may not have missed a tweet.
So. She almost has 10K followers on Instagram, so you should go follow her. She has some nice photos on her. Even if you don't use her, she posts some really cool pictures.
Let's
so you should go check
it
her
again, out. And I'll do it, and then everybody can do it themselves too.
Hazier, that's EHASIER photo. Hazier Photo, all together, one word. Boom. Give her a follow.
Wow. I'm helping really cool on the march to 10K.
Yeah. Let's get her up there before the end of the year, at least. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a question? Because you said that, and then we got off on a lot of tangents.
Yeah. What did you take away from the voice memo we sent from you from the art show on Friday night?
That was what I was talking about. My takeaway was that Elizabeth has a Twitter that I missed, and that I was watching the movie Tetris, by the way, when that came across. Very, very, very good. And shout out to Steven Serta of Arrowhead Pride. He recommended it to me. And so very good movie. But yeah, it sounded like a good time. That's all I'll say. Yeah. And it sounded like Holden agreed with me on I guess at this point we've gone so far in the weeds, and we probably explained this, but last week Brandon wanted to lie to everybody and wanted to mislead people.
I want to lie to everyone.
Yes, you
did. Wanted to do a bit.
You said, I want to do an episode of the NFC East mixtape where we don't talk about the NFC East. I said, that's an awesome idea. Let's do that. We'll talk about other NFL things, blah, 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 blah. And you said,
I didn't want to do that, honestly. I wanted just to do it completely off topic about movies and stuff, but I didn't spell that out enough.
Well,
so
I said, we'll say that at the beginning. And you said, no, we're not going to say that. We're going to actually, and I said this last week, we're going to tell everybody that we have a great show in store for them. And they were just,
it's like a joke.
No, but then I said, and I find this to be true. I would love for somebody to agree with me that like people would have gotten confused. People would have like tweeted us and been like, guys, you got so distracted. You didn't even like get to the point.
Yeah,
like,
that's the point.
No, but then they would have been confused. I don't want to confuse the audience. Like, I'm not here to do that to them. Like, why would you want to lead them astray? That's because
I've listened to podcasts like that before. There was a Sixers podcast that I listened to. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt right now for the live Ricky podcast, the Ricky Sanchez, where they did an episode one time where they titled it whatever, and then they just talked nothing about basketball. And it made sense because like it was just a time where the topic was too exhausting anyway. So they just talked about literally anything else as a deviation.
I think that you would have led us into a darkness that we wouldn't have been able to recover from. So
all right, well, let's end the episode. We gone long, but it was some fun off the
but my takeaway from the call was that, or the message was that Holden agreed with me. Like Holden was like, yeah, like that again, I'm being serious. Like that was my understanding of it, was that Holden was like, no, RJ's right. Like RJ makes sense.
No, he loves me more. So sorry.
Anyway, as we leave, Brandon, I would like you to tell us what your favorite piece to get is in the game of Tetris and why.
The long boy, the longest one, the straight one.
Do you put it vertically or horizontally?
Depends.
What's your preference?
I like starting out with it because then you put it right at the bottom row. Boom.